Why was she trembling when no one else seemed to notice? The bus rattled through the gates of Camp Iron Ridge, heat shimmering on asphalt, the Texas sun pressing down like judgment itself. Recruits shifted in their seats, some whispering nervously, others trying to look tougher than they felt. But one girl sat perfectly still. Torres. Her hands betrayed her, white knuckles gripping the strap of her backpack like it was the only steady thing in her world. Her dark eyes scanned the base. Barracks, fences, watchtowers, every detail noted, processed, filed away. She wasn't gawking like the others. She was calculating. The bus hissed to a halt, doors opened, and there he stood. Colonel, a statue of muscle and metals, jaw cut from stone, reputation sharper than the knife on his belt. He was the kind of man recruits feared before they even met him. Stories about him spread through bases like wildfire. He broke soldiers fast, shattered their pride. He found your weakness and ripped it open until you either hardened or quit. Welcome to hell, ladies, and his voice cut like shrapnel. No one dared breathe. The recruits formed a line, sweat dripped, eyes darted, stalked them like prey. When he reached, he paused, looked her up and down, too slight, too small. She looked like a strong wind might topple her. Torres, he barked. Why exactly are you wasting my time? You think you belong here? His chin didn't move, her voice steady. To serve my country, sir. Snickers rippled through the line. From the corner of her eye she caught the smirk of a tall recruit, square jaw, cocky grin, already sure he was better than everyone else. His lips curved into something colder than a smile. We'll see how long that patriotism lasts. And just like that, the test had already begun. That night in the barracks, unpacked in silence, prowled over, tossing insults about book smarts and weak recruits. She ignored him, folding her few belongings with methodical care. The only other female recruit slipped her a water bottle after walked away. Ignore him, she whispered. Loud doesn't mean strong. Gave the faintest nod, but inside her heart pounded. Because beneath her pillow waited an envelope. She hadn't needed to open it. She already knew what it contained, why she was really here. Not one of them suspected, not yet. Dawn broke like a grenade, reveille blared. Recruits scrambled into formation, stalked the field as they dropped for push-ups, placed herself in the middle of the pack, not failing, not excelling, safe in mediocrity, invisible, or so she thought. Torres, your form is garbage, crouched beside her. His shadow blocked out the sun. Maybe you should read a book about push-ups before wasting my time. Yes, sir. She corrected her stance, not enough to impress, just enough to pass. Later came their first survival drill. Maps, compasses, 6 hours to find extraction, seized control of their team. I've done this since Boy Scouts, follow me. An hour later they were lost, rolled her eyes. Jackson, the quietest of them all, just kept walking. Studied the moss on trees, the sun's position. She whispered to Jackson where to lead them. By the time realized they were back on course and only 20 minutes from extraction. Not first, not last, just quietly correct. But someone had noticed. Sergeant Dawson, weathered face, eyes like an eagle. He didn't speak, but his gaze lingered on longer than it should have. That night announced their first firearms qualification. Those who failed would be recycled or discharged. The next morning the firing range felt like a courtroom. One shot could change your life, boasted, his confidence filling the air. Her hands trembled as she loaded her M4. She fumbled, dropped a round, whispered an apology, checked his watch with exaggerated annoyance. She missed her first shot, missed again. By her fifth, whispers spread among the recruits, loomed over her. Worst shooting I've seen in 15 years. He held up her pathetic target for all to see. Ladies, and this is failure. Laughter followed. His voice rose loudest. Maybe she should stick to reading about guns instead of shooting them. His cheeks burned, but she stood at attention, unmoving, eyes fixed forward. Only saw the tremble of her lower lip. Only noticed she almost broke. That night sat alone on her bunk. She opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph, a man in fatigues, younger beside him, both wearing elite unit patches, her eyes staring back from the photo. "They'll see who I really am," she whispered. Hours later, long after taps, when the barracks slept, she slipped from her bed like a shadow. Out the window, across the compound, past the guards, every step calculated, every breath controlled. The firing range stood empty under the moonlight. She picked the lock of the armory with hands that knew how, retrieved her rifle. Out in the dark, she set up at the 300-meter line, same position where she'd humiliated herself hours earlier. Her first shots missed again. Then again, she cursed under her breath, adjusted, a voice cut through the silence. "Elbow locked, that's your problem." She spun, rifle raised. Sergeant Dawson leaned against a post, arms folded. "Sergeant, I can explain." He waved her off, calm, unshaken. "You're controlling your breathing too much. A natural shooter doesn't think about it, they just breathe between heartbeats. Try again." Hesitant, she adjusted as he instructed, fired. The bullet slammed center mass. "Better," Dawson said softly. "Now the real question, why would someone who can shoot like that deliberately fail in front of the colonel?" She froze, heart pounding. 3 more shots, all perfect, fluid, controlled, nothing like the fumbling recruit of daylight. "Sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight," she whispered. Dawson studied her, silent. "Your uncle teach you that?" Her trigger finger twitched. "What makes you think my uncle taught me anything?" Dawson stepped closer. "Because I served with a Torres once. Carlos Torres, best marksman I ever knew, had this theory about shooting between heartbeats, any relation." She broke down the rifle with calm precision. "It's a common name." "Not common enough," Dawson muttered. His eyes narrowed. "Tomorrow, at remedial qualification, you're going to shoot like you just did for me. No more hiding." "With respect, Sergeant, that would draw attention I don't need." "You already have it. Been watching you since the bus rolled in. Question is why, unless he knows something I don't." Said nothing, but when Dawson turned to leave, his voice carried back through the night. "Your secret won't stay hidden forever, Torres. And when the colonel finds out who you really are, there'll be no going back." The stars burned above her. The range stretched silent. She laid down, aimed at the 2,000-meter target barely visible in the moonlight, breathed between heartbeats, squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew into the dark. A long second later, a metallic ping echoed, a perfect hit. And in that moment, she knew. It was only a matter of time before they discovered who she really was. Why had made her the primary shooter? The morning air was crisp, the range stretching under the wide Texas sky. The recruit stood in formation, tension thick enough to choke. His voice cut through the silence like a rifle crack. "Change of plans. Today you'll compete in teams, timed course, varying distances, accuracy and speed." Murmurs spread like sparks through the line. A competition this early was unheard of. Eyes scanned them, cold and precise. When he called out assignments, no one breathed. Then came the twist. Team 4, Jackson, Winters, Torres. Torres will serve as primary shooter. A ripple of disbelief swept through the formation. Turned her head sharply, confusion flashing across her face. His laugh was audible, dripping with scorn. "Sir, with respect," called, unable to contain himself. "Torres failed qualification yesterday. She'll sink their score." His gaze locked onto him. His tone dropped to razor-edged sarcasm. "Thank you, recruit. I didn't realize you'd been promoted to training officer. Team 4's shooter will be Torres. Dismissed." The silence that followed was louder than shouting. Felt eyes boring into her. Whispers, smirks, suspicion. She forced her face still, but inside her pulse hammered. Was trying to humiliate her or test her. On the sidelines, Dawson's expression was unreadable. He gave the faintest shake of his head, almost a warning. At the range, Team 4 took their positions, leaned close. "What's he playing at? Setting you up." Checked her rifle, every movement deliberate, steady. Doesn't matter, we shoot. The whistle blew, Team 4 surged into action, and Winters moved to secondary targets. Jackson covered flanks. Dropped prone, eye pressed to her scope. The first shots were cautious, controlled, solid but unspectacular. Murmurs continued from the watching recruits. But then, as the distance increased, something shifted. At 500 meters, she fired 5 times in under 15 seconds. 5 hits, perfect grouping. Whispers spread. At 800 meters, she adjusted instantly for crosswind. 3 more hits, tight as a fist. Even Dawson's eyes flickered with something like recognition. By 1,000 meters, the whispers became silence, moved like she had been born to the rifle, breathing slowed, movements precise, shots falling center mass again and again. Watching from the sidelines shifted uncomfortably, his smug confidence cracked. The final challenge loomed 1,500 meters, shifting winds, targets swaying. Recruits before her had missed or barely scraped hits. Lay still. Stepped closer, his shadow cutting across her prone body. Having trouble, Torres. His voice was just loud enough to carry. Waiting for the wind, sir. Sometimes you can't wait for perfect conditions in combat. And sometimes patience saves lives, sir. Silence stretched, then she squeezed the trigger 3 times. The range officer's voice echoed through the speakers. 3 hits, center mass. Gasped a few cheers. Team 4 finished with the highest score of the day, not just winning, shattering records. When it was over, stared at her in disbelief. Where the hell did that come from? Only offered a faint shrug, better day. But as she rose, was waiting. His face gave nothing away, but his words cut low just for her. Show me who you really are, Torres. That night the camp buzzed with whispers. The girl who couldn't shoot yesterday had dominated the range today. Some called it luck, others suspected a game. Wasn't subtle about his fury. He confronted her in the mess hall, loud, public. Nobody hides skills like that without a reason. You a plant, a ringer to make the rest of us look bad. Didn't look up from her tray. Maybe you should spend less time making theories and more time on your grouping beyond 800 meters. It was inconsistent. Snickers, gasps, his face flushed crimson. Who the hell are you? He snarled. Before he could push further, Dawson's voice snapped like thunder. Recruit, PT Field, now move. Stormed out, but the damage was done. The entire mess hall now looked at differently. Not invisible, not weak, something else, something unknown. Later, alone in her bunk, she turned the photograph over in her hands again. Her father, Colonel beside him, both younger, both smiling. Her secret burned heavier now. Dawson knew enough to suspect, had been watching from day one, wouldn't stop digging. And still she couldn't break cover, not yet. Because she wasn't just here to pass training, she was here for answers. The next day summoned her to his office. His space was spotless. Awards lined the walls, every medal in perfect alignment. On one wall, framed, hung a photograph. Froze. It was the same one she kept under her pillow, and her father side by side. His eyes caught hers. Something cold passed between them. Well, well, he said softly. The mystery solves itself. You're Carlos Torres' niece. Her heart stilled, her cover cracked. And in that instant she realized, whatever game had been playing, it had only just begun. Why hadn't he reported her already? When Colonel uttered her father's name, something inside fractured. For weeks she had carried the photograph like a hidden blade, its edges cutting her in silence. Now the Colonel's voice dragged it into daylight. Carlos Torres, her father, a name buried in classified reports, a man remembered by few and by one in particular who now sat across from her. His office was quiet, except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. His eyes studied her with the same cold precision he used on the firing line. You deliberately failed qualification, he said. His tone wasn't angry. It was measured, almost curious. Then, in front of everyone, you destroyed my competition record. Care to explain? Kept her posture rigid, eyes locked just above his head, the regulation way to avoid direct defiance. I was nervous yesterday, sir. Today I was prepared. Don't insult me. His voice sharpened. I want to know why. The silence stretched, and in it her pulse thundered. If she told him the truth, everything would unravel too soon. If she lied, he might already know enough to burn her. Leaned back. His gaze shifted to the framed photo on the wall, two young soldiers, dust-streaked and smiling, himself, and Carlos. Your father was the finest shot I ever knew, said softly. Better than anyone I've trained, better than me. His jaw tightened. Until the day he was. The words landed heavy, her throat tightened. Permission to speak freely, sir. He gave a curt nod. You knew him, she said. Then you know he didn't just stop being good. Stare cut through her. I know he made a choice, one that cost men their lives, one that cost me everything I built with him. The air seemed to thin. Nails dug into her palms. She wanted to shout, to defend her father, to throw the photo in his face, but discipline held her in check. Dismissed, barked suddenly. The word slammed like a door. She left the office, heart pounding, stare burning into her back. Outside, the sun was blinding. Recruits drilled on the field, their shouts sharp and hollow. To them, it was just another day. For her, the world had shifted. Later in the barracks, cornered her. What happened? He called you in, what did he say? Forced calm into her voice. Nothing, routine. But wasn't convinced. He's watching you, Torres, everyone can see it, and he's not going to let this go. As if summoned, appeared at the far end of the hall, glaring. His smirk was gone. What replaced it was worse, suspicion. That night couldn't sleep. She sat at her bunk, rifle across her knees, cleaning it with slow, careful movements, not because it needed it, but because the ritual kept her hands from shaking. The photograph lay face down beside her. She couldn't look at it, not after hearing's words. A voice broke the silence. Your hands are too steady for someone who supposedly can't shoot. She looked up. Sergeant Dawson leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp as ever. His first instinct was defense. Sergeant, He held up a hand. Relax, I'm not writing you up. I've seen shooters fake it before, never as convincingly as you. Swallowed, maybe I just got lucky today. Dawson's lips twitched, not a smile, something harder. Luck doesn't land 3 center mass hits at 1,500 meters in a crosswind. That's skill, that's training. He stepped closer. So I'll ask again, who taught you? The silence between them was electric. His eyes dropped to the rifle in her lap. Family. Carlos Torres. Dawson said the name like a test. Froze. I knew him, Dawson continued quietly. Served with him, best shot I ever saw, and then one day he was gone. They said he made the wrong call, disobeyed, got men killed. Dawson crouched, leveling his gaze with hers. But I never believed it. His throat burned. Her voice came out low, almost a whisper. He didn't make the wrong call. Dawson studied her face, then nodded slightly. Didn't think so. He rose, straightened. Be careful, Torres, not just testing you. He's carrying ghosts, and ghosts don't die easy. He left her with the words hanging heavy in the air. The next day, training escalated. Stress shooting. Simulated battlefield chaos. Explosions piped through loudspeakers, lights flashing, screams blaring from hidden speakers. Recruits faltered under the noise, cursed under his breath when his grouping scattered wide. When's turn came, she stepped to the line. The chaos washed over her and fell away. Her world shrank to the scope, the breath, the pause between heartbeats. She fired. Every shot landed tight, deadly, perfect. Instructors exchanged looks. Dawson's jaw tightened, eyes narrowed. When it ended, murmurs rippled through the recruits, shoved past her. Don't get cocky. One good round doesn't make you a soldier. Didn't answer. She didn't need to. The target behind her spoke louder than any words. But inside, turmoil raged. Each shot pulled her deeper into the open. Each success tore at the cover she'd built. The girl who failed qualification couldn't exist anymore. That night she returned to the envelope, to the photograph. She traced her father's face with trembling fingers. The unanswered questions burned hotter than ever. What had really happened that day? What choice had cost him everything? And why did look at her as if he already knew the answer? Why was her father's name missing from the memorial wall? The thought struck her during morning formation as voice thundered commands across the field. Rows of recruits snapped to attention. Sweat rolled down brows. The air smelled of dust and discipline. But all could think of was absence. Her father had died a soldier. Everyone said so. Folded flags, official words, solemn ceremony. And yet his name had never been carved where the honored dead were remembered. She had searched. Online databases, old photographs of plaques, nothing. Like someone wanted him erased. That absence ate at her now. After drills, made sure she didn't forget he was watching. He passed her in the chow line, leaning close enough for his breath to brush her ear. Nobody goes from worthless to perfect overnight. You're hiding something, Torres, and I'll find out what. His smirk was back but colder, a predator's promise. Slid beside at the table, lowering her voice. He's obsessed. You need to be careful. Kept her tone neutral. Let him dig, he won't like what he finds. But deep down, a knot tightened, because if dug far enough, he might find exactly what already suspected. That evening, as recruits cleaned gear, a runner appeared at the barracks door. Torres, Colonel wants you. His office was dim in the late light. The blinds slanted shadows across the spotless desk. He didn't gesture for her to sit. You've been performing above expectations, he said flatly, far above. And yet I can't shake the memory of that first day at the range, the clumsy recruit who could barely load her weapon. His eyes pierced her. Which version is real? His throat tightened. Both, sir. The faintest flicker of something, amusement, contempt, crossed his face. You sound like your father. Her pulse spiked. You knew him. I did more than know him. His voice dropped low. I bled with him, fought beside him, trusted him more than anyone. His jaw flexed. Until the day he chose his own conscience over his orders. That's when I learned trust can kill. The words left a chill. Wanted to demand the truth but turned away, ending the conversation with brutal finality. Dismissed. She left his office with the words ringing in her skull. Conscience over orders. What had her father done? That night caught her sitting awake, eyes hollow, photograph clutched in her hand. She whispered, You've got to let me in. What's going on? Shook her head. If I tell you, it'll put you in danger too. Danger from what? We're in training, not combat. His voice cracked, frustrated. Couldn't answer, because was wrong. Training or not, the battlefield had already found her. The next day, a new exercise began. Stress drills under simulated combat fire. Loudspeakers pumped chaos into the air, explosions, gunfire, screaming radios. The recruits stumbled under the noise. Some broke entirely. Stepped to the line. The chaos hit her and fell away. She fired. 1, 2, 3. Each round slammed dead center, her grouping than anyone's. Whispers erupted behind her. Someone muttered, She shoots like she's been doing it her whole life. Dawson watched, arms folded. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, they were searching. For confirmation, for truth. When the drill ended, stormed past her, fury in his eyes. This isn't you, you're a plant. Admit it. Met his glare evenly. Maybe you should stop looking at me and start looking at your own shots. The words stung. Fists clenched. Before he could snap, Dawson barked, PT Field, move. Stalked off, humiliated, but knew he wouldn't stop. That evening, Dawson found her cleaning her rifle in the dark corner of the barracks. His voice was quiet. You shoot like Carlos Torres, same rhythm, same patience. Her fingers froze on the bolt carrier. Dawson crouched beside her. I was there when he fell, not on the ground, but close enough to know the story we were told didn't add up. His gaze hardened. Operation Kingfisher, that mean anything to you? Her heart lurched. The name struck like lightning. She had never heard it spoken aloud, only seen fragments buried in redacted reports. What happened? She whispered. Dawson's voice dropped to a growl. Bad intel, worse orders, and your father, he made a call, took a shot he wasn't supposed to, a perfect shot, saved lives, but the brass didn't want that story told, so they buried him. The words hollowed her chest. She forced her voice steady. Why are you telling me this? Because won't, Dawson said. His jaw tightened. He and your father were there together, and whatever happened between them, it never healed. His eyes dropped to the photograph in her lap, her father, smiling, before everything went wrong. Dawson rose, his silhouette framed in the barracks light. Careful, Torres. You keep shooting like you did today, people are going to start asking questions. Questions the colonel doesn't want answered. Then he left her in silence. That night lay awake, her father's voice echoing in memory. Trust yourself. The rifle is just a tool. You are the weapon. Her eyes burned with tears she wouldn't let fall. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure if uncovering the truth would save her father's name or destroy her. Why did the truth always come wrapped in lies? Asked herself that question as she stood on the range the next morning, rifle slung across her chest, eyes boring into her from under the brim of his campaign hat. Every movement she made felt like it echoed. Every breath felt measured, judged. The whispers hadn't stopped since yesterday's drill. She shoots like a ghost. Nobody gets that good without a story. Who is she really? And was no longer mocking her. He was hunting her. Let's make this interesting, announced, voice booming across the field. Today, long-range trials. Wind, elevation, time limits. One mistake and you're done. Recruits shuffled nervously. Long-range tests didn't usually come this early. His choice was deliberate. Knew it. One by one, recruits fired. Some passed, some failed. Stepped up, shoulders square, arrogance leaking from every pore. His shots at 800 meters were solid. At 1,000 he faltered, shots scattering wide. By 1,200 his frustration was obvious. When he returned, didn't even look at him. His gaze slid past two. Torres, he barked, lane 3. She moved forward, heart pounding but hands steady. She lay prone, adjusted the bipod, cheek pressed to the stock. The first target, 800 meters. She exhaled, fired, center. Then 1,000, adjusted for wind, another hit. By 1,200 the world had narrowed to her scope, the trigger, the heartbeat pause. The chaos of camp faded away. 3 shots, 3 perfect strikes. The murmurs grew louder. Recruits leaned forward. Even jaw-tight couldn't hide his shock. But wasn't satisfied. 1,500, he ordered. His voice was flat, testing, pushing. She adjusted her scope, every motion calm. Waited for the wind. Fired, ping, dead center. The range officer's voice confirmed it. Target struck, center mass. Gasps, a ripple through the line. But didn't flinch. His voice dropped to a near whisper only she could hear. You shoot like him. The words landed heavy, like an accusation, like a wound reopened. When it was over, walked off the line to scattered applause. Eyes were wide with awe. Jackson gave her a subtle nod, but stare was venom. That evening in the mess hall made his move. He chose his moment carefully, loud enough for others to hear. Enough games, Torres. You don't get to pretend anymore. Who are you really? Kept her eyes on her tray. Just another recruit. Bullshit. He slammed his hand down, silverware clattering. Nobody hides skills like that without a reason. You're a plant, maybe even an experiment. You've been lying to all of us. Conversations around them stopped. Recruits leaned in, tension thick. Finally looked up, her gaze steady. Maybe you should worry less about me and more about why you can't hit past 1,000. Laughter broke from a few tables. His face burned red. He lunged forward, fists clenched. Enough! Dawson's voice cut like a blade. The entire hall froze, his eyes locked on, outside now. Seethed but obeyed, storming out under the weight of every eye. Dawson lingered by his table. He didn't speak, just gave her a long, searching look. Then he left. That night Dawson found her near the equipment shed. She was cleaning her rifle again, unable to sleep, unable to still her mind. "You need to be careful," Dawson said. His voice was low, almost fatherly. "Isn't your real problem is he sees you, he's putting pieces together." His hands stilled. Then maybe he already knows. Dawson studied her. "Do you?" Her throat tightened. "Know what?" "What your father really did." The words cracked something inside her. Dawson stepped closer. His voice softened. "Operation Kingfisher wasn't what the reports said. Your father didn't fail. He didn't disobey for the sake of ego. He saved lives, mine included." Her breath caught. "You were there." Not in his scope, but close enough to know the difference between cowardice and sacrifice. Dawson's eyes glistened in the dim light. They called it shooter error, but it was politics. Command needed a scapegoat. Carlos Torres became that scapegoat. Swallowed hard, the photograph of her father flashing in her mind. In. Dawson hesitated. Was with him, he knows what really happened, but what's heavier than truth is guilt, and's been carrying that weight ever since. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint hum of the night. Finally Dawson said, "Torres, if you want to clear your father's name, you'll have your chance. But you need to be ready. Isn't done with you, not by a long shot." Then he walked away, leaving her with her rifle, her secrets, and the gnawing certainty that the battlefield she'd been avoiding was coming for her, whether she was ready or not. She looked up at the moonlit range. Targets lined the dark like ghosts waiting to be claimed. She shouldered the rifle, aimed at the farthest steel plate, 1,800 meters, almost invisible in the night haze. Her finger curled on the trigger. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, "Trust yourself. The rifle is just a tool. You are the weapon." She breath paused, fired. The silence stretched, then ping, perfect. Her chest ached as the sound faded, because she knew. Soon everyone else would hear it too. Why did keep pushing her past the breaking point? The recruits thought the colonel's new extreme trials were just another sadistic twist in the program, but knew better. Every challenge was aimed at her, every order sharpened into a blade with her name on it. The next morning the sun hadn't fully broken when marched them to the range. His voice was iron. "Today you will shoot under duress. No rests, no breaks, full kit. If you collapse, you fail." They groaned under the weight of rucks and rifles. But when the whistle blew, Swirled tunneled into precision. Her breath rasped under the pack straps, sweat burning her eyes, but her shots kept landing true. Circled behind her, his voice low. "Do you know why your father failed, Torres?" The words sliced deeper than the sunburn on her skin. She kept her scope steady. "No, sir." He hesitated, growled. When orders demanded fire, he waited, conscience over command, and men died for it. His finger trembled on the trigger, not enough to throw the shot, but enough for her to feel it. She squeezed, hit. Leaned closer. "You won't last here if you inherit his weakness." She wanted to scream. Instead, she fired again. Another center hit. Later, caught up to her at the hydration station. "What the hell was that? He was breathing down your neck like he wanted you to break." Shrugged, feigning calm. "Maybe that's exactly what he wants." Overheard, his laugh was sharp. "No, what he wants is to see if Torres here is as fake as she looks." His smirk widened. "And I plan to prove she is." Shot him a glare. "You're obsessed." "Maybe," said, his eyes never left, but obsession wins wars. That night found Dawson waiting near the motor pool, cigarette glowing in the dark. He didn't smoke much, only when something weighed heavy. "You look like hell," he muttered. She dropped onto the bench beside him. "Feels about right." For a moment, silence. Then Dawson said, "He's forcing you into your father's shadow. Every drill, every test. He's not training you, he's trying to rewrite the past." His voice cracked. "Then why doesn't he just say it? Why doesn't he admit what happened?" Dawson exhaled smoke into the night. "Because admitting the truth means admitting he let it happen. He needs you to fail so he can keep believing your father did too." Her hands clenched into fists. "Then I won't give him that satisfaction." Dawson looked at her, eyes tired but steady. "Be careful, pride's a heavy pack to carry." The following day unveiled a new challenge. A moving target gauntlet, targets swinging, dropping, reappearing. Wind machines cranked up to full. The kind of scenario even seasoned operators dreaded. Went first, swagger intact. He hit some, missed more. His frustration was visible by the end. Stepped up's voice carried. "Torres, lane 4, show us if yesterday was luck." She dropped prone, adjusted her scope. The wind howled, targets jerked unpredictably, but her focus narrowed. Breathe, heartbeat squeeze. Ping, ping, ping. 3 in a row. The murmurs started again. She hit 5, then 7, each strike precise, almost surgical. By the end, she had cleared the gauntlet with near perfection. The range went silent. Stared, looked stricken, mouthed "holy shit." But didn't bask. She lowered her rifle, calm, almost expressionless, because inside turmoil raged. Every shot she hit dragged her further from cover. Every perfect group painted a target on her back. That night snapped. She woke to hands on her locker, prying it open. She sat up fast, froze in the glow of a contraband flashlight, caught red-handed. "What are you doing?" she hissed. Sneered, "Looking for your secret, because nobody shoots like that unless they're hiding something." Stirred awake, voice sharp, "Get out." But he wasn't leaving. He yanked open's drawer, the envelope spilled out, the photograph. Grabbed it before she could move. He held it to the light, his grin spread slow and cruel. "Well, well, this explains a lot." Lunged, snatching it back, shoving it deep into her jacket. Her voice was steel. "Put your nose in my business again, and you won't like where it leads." For once didn't laugh. He just stared at her, eyes calculating. Then he left without a word. Whispered in the silence that followed, "That picture, who was it?" Couldn't answer, couldn't let the truth slip free. Because if knew, she'd carry the danger too. The next morning announced the most brutal test yet. Night shoot, limited light, extreme range. "Targets at 1,800 meters, declared. His eyes cut to. "Few men have ever hit at that distance. We'll see if anyone here can." The recruits muttered in disbelief. That kind of distance was nearly impossible. Smirk returned. "Let's see you fail this one, Torres." Said nothing, but inside her heart pounded. Because 1,800 meters wasn't just a number. It was the distance her father had once hit. The shot that had saved lives and branded him a traitor. Now was dragging her into that same shadow. And she couldn't tell if he wanted her to succeed or to break. Why did the world fall silent when she pulled the trigger? The night air was sharp, almost electric. Floodlights washed the range in pale gold, their beams fatting into darkness where the 1,800-meter targets waited, nearly invisible. The recruits shuffled uneasily, boots scraping gravel. Nobody wanted this test. Nobody believed it could even be passed. But stood tall, his silhouette framed against the lights. His voice carried iron. 3 shots, that's all you get. Anyone who misses doesn't belong here." A murmur rippled through the line. Even whispered, "That's not training, that's a firing squad." Muttered loud enough for all to hear. "Perfect, Torres finally gets exposed." Ignored him, she focused on her rifle, her breath, the weight of memory pressing down like a second rucksack. 1,800 meters. Her father's distance, The one shot they never let him keep. The shot that saved men but branded him as a traitor. Now it was hers. Went before her brimming with arrogance. He fired, missed, adjusted, missed again. By his third shot his frustration was visible, his grouping so wide the range officer shook his head, stormed off jaw tight muttering curses. Others tried, most failed miserably. The wind played tricks, the distance mocked them. By the time her name was called, tension hung over the range like a storm cloud. Torres, lane 4. She stepped forward, every eye followed. The pack on her back felt heavier than armor. She lowered herself prone, adjusted the bipod, set her cheek against the stock. The target was a ghost at that distance, a faint blur against darkness. She slowed her breathing, blocked out the whispers, the doubts. His voice in her head, your father hesitated. No, he hadn't. Her father's words rose instead. The rifle is just a tool. You are the weapon. Inhaled, exhaled, squeezed. Ping! The sound carried faint but clear. The range erupted in disbelief. Gasps. Even laughter, the nervous kind that comes when the impossible has just been seen. She didn't flinch, she adjusted, fired again. Ping! The silence this time was deafening. Recruits craned their necks. Hands covered her mouth. Face blanched, rage boiling beneath his skin. Breath one last time. Her finger curled, steady as stone. Ping! 3 perfect hits. The floodlights buzzed. The air felt brittle, ready to snap. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. Finally stepped forward. His boots crunched gravel, slow and deliberate, until he stood over her prone form. His voice was low, but it carried like thunder. Who are you, Torres? The words weren't rhetorical. They were a demand, a command. Rose, rifle cradled in her arms. Her eyes met his. For the first time, she didn't look away. You already know, she said softly. The recruits buzzed with confusion. Jaw clenched, he leaned closer, his voice just for her. Say it. Her throat tightened. The photograph burned like fire against her chest. She forced the words free. Carlos Torres was my father. The range erupted. Gasps, curses, whispers spreading like wildfire. Froze, stunned. His mouth twisted into a savage grin, confirmation of everything he'd suspected. But his face was stone. His eyes, though, betrayed a storm. Dismissed, he barked. The recruits scattered, still whispering, still starring, but stood rooted, unable to move. She had pulled the trigger, not just on the targets, but on her secret. That night the barracks was alive with speculation. Recruits whispered her name like it was radioactive, finally cornered her. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice trembled, hurt mingling with fear. Because knowing puts you in danger, whispered. Shook her head. Danger from what? This is training, we're not at war. But couldn't answer, because still didn't understand. War had never left her. It had followed her here, through every bullet, every shadow. Confronted her in the hall, his grin was vicious. I knew it. You've been lying since day one, and now everyone knows who you are, the disgraced sniper's daughter. Didn't blink. He wasn't disgraced, he was betrayed. Laughed. Keep telling yourself that. Doesn't matter, you'll never escape his shadow, won't let you. He leaned close, whispering, and neither will I. Shoved past him, pulse pounding. His words weren't idle. He would dig deeper, and when he did, he might uncover truths even she wasn't ready for. Later summoned her again. His office was darker this time, the blinds drawn, the framed photograph catching only a sliver of lamplight. You humiliated me today, he said coldly. Swallowed, I only shot. You repeated his sin, snapped. The perfect shot. The shot that cost me my men, the shot that cost him his honor. Her voice cracked. That shot saved lives. Not the ones who mattered, growled, his fists clenched. You think you know the truth. You don't. You're playing with fire, and when it burns you, don't expect me to put it out. She stood silent, trembling inside but refusing to yield. Finally, his voice dropped, almost a whisper. Sometimes the dead are better left buried. Dismissed again, cast out into shadows. Back in the barracks, she lay awake, the echoes of those 3 shots still ringing in her ears. They had shattered her cover, shattered the silence around her father's name. But they had also lit a fuse, and knew when it reached the end, the explosion would consume them all. Why did the truth feel heavier than any rifle she had ever carried? The camp was different after the shots. 3 perfect strikes at 1,800 meters had silenced every whisper, but in their place came something worse: fear. Not just of her, but of what she represented. The ghost of a man half the recruits had never known, but all had heard of now. Her father, Carlos Torres. The name spread like wildfire, carried in hushed tones and sharp stares. Some recruits looked at her with awe, others with suspicion, only with rage. He cornered her 2 nights later when the barracks were quiet and shadows stretched long across the floor. Tried to step between them but shoved her aside. His face was pale with fury, his voice shaking. "You think you're special because you're his blood. You're not. You're a fraud. You've been lying since the day you walked in here, and I'm going to expose you for what you are." Stood still, her jaw set. "You want to expose me? Fine. But don't pretend this is about me. This is about you failing every time you looked through a scope and saw what you'll never be." The words landed like a strike. Fists curled, but footsteps echoed down the hall before he could lash out. Dawson appeared, silent as a shadow. His eyes burned into until the recruit stepped back, seething, retreating into the dark. When they were alone, Dawson spoke softly. "He's dangerous now. Don't let him bait you." Exhaled, hands trembling. "He doesn't scare me." Dawson tilted his head, studying her. "Good, but should." The next day proved him right. Assembled them on the range once more, his voice flat and unforgiving. "War doesn't care about your names, or your fathers, or your ghosts. It only cares about survival. Today, you'll prove if you belong here." The drill was brutal, shifting distances, surprise commands, a barrage of physical exertion between shots. Recruits stumbled, cursed, failed. By the time's turn came, sweat plastered her hair to her forehead, her chest heaving. But her shots still landed true, one after another. She didn't just hit targets. She carved her father's truth into steel. When the whistle blew, approached, face carved from stone. He dismissed the others with a bark, leaving them alone on the field. "You think you've proven something," he said quietly. Met his stare. "I proved my father wasn't a failure." His jaw clenched. His eyes shifted toward the horizon as if searching for something beyond reach. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost human. "Operation Kingfisher, you've read the reports." She nodded. "Then you know they're lies," said. His words cut through her like shrapnel. "Your father did miss. He didn't disobey out of pride. He saw what command didn't, a trap. Ambush positions dug in where intel swore there were none. He took the shot, saved half the unit, but his throat tightened. The other half never made it out, and I was the one who gave the order he broke." His chest ached. "So why call him a traitor? Why bury his name?" "Because command needed a scapegoat," said bitterly. "And because I didn't stop them. I let it happen. Because admitting he was right meant admitting I was wrong." The silence stretched, raw and suffocating. Finally whispered, "You ruined him." His eyes glistened, but his face remained steel. "I ruined us both." He turned away, voice hardening again. "Leave it buried, Torres. Some ghosts are too heavy to carry." But knew she couldn't. That night made his final move. She caught him rifling through her locker again, only this time he wasn't alone. A couple of recruits flanked him, eager for drama, hungry for weakness. He held the photograph high, sneering. "Here it is, proof. The sniper's daughter, the liar, the disgrace." Stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fire in her chest. "That man saved lives. You can spit on his name all you want, but it won't change the truth." Laughed, but it was hollow. "Truth, There is no truth here, just stories, and yours ends with failure." He shoved the photo into her chest and stormed off, his entourage trailing. For once didn't chase him, didn't fight back, because she realized then wasn't her enemy, not really. The enemy was silence, the silence that had buried her father. And now, after 3 shots at 1,800 meters, that silence was broken. The next morning's voice called her name one final time, not for punishment, not for trial, but for dismissal. "You've done what you came to do," he said quietly, away from the others. "You cleared his name, at least in the eyes of those who matter, but don't expect the world to write it down. Don't expect medals or memorials. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." His throat burned. She wanted to hate him, wanted to forgive him. In the end, she could do neither. She only nodded. When she left camp, rifle slung over her shoulder hugged her tight. Dawson gave her a rare, almost imperceptible smile, even didn't meet her eyes. The road stretched wide under a rising sun. Each step felt like walking beside her father's shadow, heavy, but no longer unbearable. Because now she understood. The shot wasn't about proving herself or proving him. It was about carrying the truth, no matter the cost. And as the dawn lit the horizon, whispered into the wind, words only her father could hear. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.